This is awesome.
Great crowd.
Wow, this is amazing. So many great people out here on a rainy day. This is awesome.
We're going to give you all the secrets for getting into YC.
All right, well, I want to make the most out of the time we have with Michael today. This is really fun. I've known you for a long time, and I have all these questions I want to ask you about YC I've never had a chance to ask. So let's just start with the basics. I mean, you have a really unique background in the context of YC. You've been a two-time YC participant, you've been a YC investing partner, and now you're the CEO of YC, effectively. So why don't you just talk about your journey, how you found out about YC in the first place, and sort of the steps that brought you to be CEO?
Wow, okay. So I'll make this really quick. I was a poli-sci major. My dad was a programmer. I went to Yale. I got kicked out of Yale my senior year. So I repeated my senior year, which wasn't actually ended up being a bad thing at all. And one of my drinking buddies was this guy named Justin Kahn. And after we graduated, he applied to the first batch ever of YC. That was summer 2005 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I went to work at a political campaign. His company didn't do so well. He ended up selling it on eBay for about $250,000. My campaign didn't do so well. We ended up losing a US Senate campaign by 3 percentage points. And he decided to start this company called Justin.tv. And somehow he cajoled me into joining him. And so we went through YC. That was actually his second of 3 times through YC. My first of 2 times. And that was the winter of 2007.
How many companies were in that batch?
So we just did our 10-year reunion with the batch. I think there were 12 companies in that batch. We all look a lot older and grayer now. So we do YC. Back then, there were these people who weren't really that popular as angels yet. There was this dude named Mike Maples. There was another dude named Ivan Sankit, another dude named Paul Buchheit. And they were kind of just cool guys who hung around YC back then. Now they have like funds or YC partners and all this crazy stuff. And they decided to invest in our really crappy startup with the idea that Justin would broadcast his life 24/7 on the internet, which is the worst startup idea in the world. Everyone here has a better idea than that. And so, our angel round back then was $170,000. And that's the money that we used to get started. Fast forward a lot of years, Justin TV became bigger, raised money, and kind of hit this point where we couldn't make it huge, and so we didn't know what to do, and we couldn't raise money either. So we had to make the company profitable, which we did, and then we started thinking of new ideas. And crazy enough, the 2 new ideas we came up with were one called Justin TV Gaming, which became Twitch, and the other, which was a modification of our mobile product, became SocialCam. And so I guess I've been working at the company, we've all been working at the company for over 5 years at that point, decided to spin SocialCam out as its own product, and then did YC again. So we were in the winter 2012 class for that, which was crazy. Justin actually did it again as well. So he was in my batch doing a startup called Exec. And we ended up selling SocialCam in about a year for $60 million. And I was invited to come back as a part-time partner. And about a year later, I was invited to join as a full-time partner. And about a year and a half later, I was invited to be the CEO. And I think I'm just being promoted to my level of incompetence. So now I'm at max incompetence.
And so what's the biggest difference so far in being CEO versus being one of the full-time investing partners?
I think there's just been a big difference in YC overall. We fund a lot more companies now, and that requires a much bigger organization. So YC has over 50 employees now. And so being CEO means I still get to work with companies every day. I'm still the head of a group along with Adora, another one of our partners. But I also have to help manage this organization that builds software for our companies, that builds the admission process, that builds our internal forum, our internal book face, all of the kind of tools that companies get to use and that we use to do our jobs. So in some ways, it's like being a partner. In some ways, it's like starting another company, which is fun.
And just so people have a sense, in terms of intake, how many companies apply to YC these days for a given batch?
7,500 companies will apply to YC each batch. Of those, 500 will receive interviews, and between 100 and 150 will get in.
And I think for a lot of people, YC can feel like this magic black box. You apply, if you're chosen, you get in. What are some of the biggest misconceptions you find that founders have about either what happens at YC or the kind of people you're looking for?
So I think the first thing is that the number one reason why founders don't apply to YC is because they don't think they'll get in. So don't be that person. I always tell people, like, no matter what, like, you should be the one rejecting us. It's free to apply. It's open to apply. Apply. And if you get in, like, reject us if you don't want to do YC. The biggest misconceptions. I'm too young to be a YC founder. We have funded 17-year-olds. I'm too old to be a YC founder. We funded 65-year-olds. I'm too far along to do YC. We funded companies with $40 million annual revenue run rates. I'm not too far along to do YC. We have funded companies that haven't written a single line of code when they applied. Oh, God. I'm too experienced to do YC. We've had companies that have founders who've sold their companies for over $250 million who have come and done YC again. That's a lot of them. Yeah. I don't have technical co-founders. It's harder, but not impossible. Every batch we probably fund on the order of 5 to 10 teams that don't have technical co-founders. God, it goes on and on. Basically, we have funded over 3,000 founders, and there really is no, I didn't go to the right school. Yeah. We have funded founders from over 180 colleges and universities around the world. I'm not from the right country. We funded founders from 25 countries in the last batch. So it's just like every single way that you think you might not belong to this community, I can show you 10 companies that look exactly like you.
Excellent. So you've seen kind of the full arc of YC, and I've, as an observer, watched the program develop. Can you give me a sense of one or two things that YC used to believe deeply in the beginning that maybe you no longer believe as deeply today with the benefit of time?
That's a really hard question because I think that a lot of our core beliefs haven't changed, strangely. Like if you think about YC's core beliefs, one is like a belief in technical co-founders. Mm-hmm. Engineers can be business people. The second is do things that don't scale. The third is that YC should be an open place for everyone. You don't need to know anyone in order to get into YC. These are things that are core. Another is like 90-10. Can you get 90% of the results for only 10% of the work? All of these things are like extremely core to YC. I would say that like in the extreme early days, YC was far more skeptical of investors. And that was left over from like the first web boom, but that's certainly changed. I think that like maybe the only significant change that's really happened over time, that we've had to do because of scale, is how can we continue to support our alumni after they've gone through the program? We've invested a lot of time and energy in software and events to continue to re-engage the alumni and give them value throughout their path. I think that's a big thing that's changed. YC Continuity Fund has been a part of that. We have annual reunions now. We all go camping. There's been a lot of software built. So those are the big changes.
Well, one of the things I always enjoy reading is whenever you all publish your request for startups, it gives me a sense of the things you'd like to see built. And I was really struck by the last wave because they were things that I wouldn't normally associate with YC. I think they were news, the future of work, and democracy, which are three kind of big things I wouldn't normally associate with YC. Can you talk about what led you to select those themes?
So I think that one of our core beliefs at YC is that software is going to disrupt every industry. And I think in the early days of YC, there was this perception that we just wanted to fund apps, little web apps. and then maybe mobile apps. And with our Quest for Startups, what we're trying to do is kind of build this case that industry after industry, software is going to disrupt whatever's going on. And I think what's cool is that, in many ways, we have to build the case. So, and even more importantly, we have to fund the companies. So there's been a huge push into hard tech, and tons of founders are starting to apply with really hard technology. And I've had companies that are building supersonic jets and satellites, and we've had to serve them, and we've done well by them. And this is like the next set of things that founders are really passionate about. And what I would say is that people think that investors have a thesis. Founders think that investors have a thesis, and that they need to kind of shape or somehow tell the story in a way that fits the investor's thesis. I don't know about anyone else, but for YC, we have no thesis. We try to figure out what you guys like and what you guys are into. And the way we figure it out is we look at what people are applying with. And a lot of times, our requests for startups are not us coming up with a new idea. It's us seeing you guys applying with these startup ideas and us saying to the world, hey, anyone else with these ideas can apply too. And so for us, it's cool because our theses come from you. Like, we just want to take the 150 best companies, and we literally do not care what they're working on, what industry they're in. And it makes it really exciting for me because I get to see everything from, everything. It's a lot of fun.
Cool. I want to switch gears a little bit. I like reading the things that you write, and you wrote, I thought, a really good blog post about how fundraising is not a milestone. Yeah. And there's a whole sub-industry in tech media about covering fundraising and financing events that happen in venture companies. Can you talk about what motivated you to write that post?
Yeah. We have a great founder at YC. Her name is Avni, and she built a company called Poppy. And Poppy is basically an Uber for babysitting. And she's building the company in Seattle. And she asked me for advice recently. She said, I think it's time for us to go out and raise a Series A. And I was like, why? How much money do you have in the bank? She's like, we have over 2 years of runway. And I was like, and are you cash strapped, or is there something you need to spend money on? I was like, no. And then I was like, well, why are we talking about this? And she said, a number of investors and advisors have just started asking her, when am I going to raise a Series A? So I thought that meant now it's time to raise a Series A. And I was just like, holy crap. Like, what do you mean? Like, Series A is just money. And I started digging in more and more, and I started realizing that this is something that a lot of YC companies face. This idea that, like, the last round of funding is what your status is. I'm a Series A company. I'm a Series B company. That's how I established my status. And what's so funny is that, man, I've seen great funding companies being funded, and you too, and I've seen horrible companies being funded. And so the idea that what some investor wants to invest in you equates to your value or status is like hilarious to me, because we just see so many companies and so many bad funding rounds. So it kind of caused me to write this essay and to really talk to people about why money is just a tool. It's not status. I'd much rather she said, we need this money for something. We've reached this milestone, or we don't need the money for something, but we've reached this milestone that now we think we have leverage. So we can go in and raise money faster at a better valuation with better investors. And that's why I want to talk about Series A. That's fine too. And so I kind of wanted to support other people who were like her, who should just ignore their investors and keep their heads down and still making their business grow. She's doing a great job.
But one thing you've touched on a little bit is just, I think a lot of us think about the front end application side of YC, people applying to get in the current batch. But with every current batch, the alumni pool gets larger and larger. Can you talk about some of the efforts and activity and energy you're spending around making that alumni experience amazing for YC folks?
Yeah, so this is a really big thing. I think that a lot of people kind of mistell the early days of YC. It's kind of like when some people talk about the 50s in America, and it's like, those are the good times. And in the early days of YC, there wasn't an alumni community. Like, if you wanted to know something, you had a couple hundred alumni at most. to ask. There weren't experts in the community. We were all young and stupid. Like, get a bunch of young, stupid people to ask for questions. Now we have this community of over 3,000 founders we funded, and there are real experts on almost every subject. And so a lot of what we do is build tools to help the alumni help each other. And for me, it all starts with Camp YC, which is our annual reunion. It's weird because I think we always had little reunion events, but this is kind of a true college reunion, 3 days in the middle of the woods. And you'd be so surprised what happens when you mix founders over 12 years in one place. There's deals getting done, introductions being made, work being done, friendships being made, and they're founders. You can't help but talk about work. And so that's been a huge thing. And then the second thing is that one of our former partners, Gary Tan, actually built an internal Quora and an internal Facebook for YC about 3-4 years ago. And YC founders exclusively can use this to ask each other questions, to look each other up, to sell their product to each other, to get advice about which investors to talk to. We also have an investor database where everyone is rated. Charles has an entry in that database. And what we didn't realize was that this was some of the most active software that we've built. Literally 2/3 of our alumni, active and non-active, use our software every week. And so they were just continuing to get value out of it. Even the billion-dollar companies are continuing to get value out of it every week. And so now we're just doing so much more to build that out. But I think between the events and the software, it's a network that's, I think, stronger than any other network I've seen in the Valley.
Since the early days, you've basically 10x the size of the class, more or less. Right from
first batch was, I think, 8. So
15x?
Yeah, 15x.
Is there an upper bound on how big YC can get in terms of class size and your ability to support them?
I think it's tricky. I think that when people think about YC, they think about 1 3-month accelerator program. And when I think about YC, I think about every founder we touch in every way we touch them. Do I think that our accelerator program can expand to 1,000 companies a year? Probably not. But do I think that we can deliver value to many more founders than we are right now? Of course. One of the things that we're launching as a replacement for the YC Fellowship, which some of you might know about, is Startup School, which is this massive online course that's being taught by us that's completely free, that allows you to participate in group office hours, allows you to have a group of founders that you can communicate with, that can be done completely remotely wherever you are. And it's one way that we kind of want to put ourselves out there and say, here's a bunch of value. It's completely free, no equity, no anything. Let me help you guys get started from day one. And I think programs like that could easily touch thousands of startups a year.
On a related note, I think in the beginning days, YC was really oriented towards that first-time founder. And as you've mentioned, you guys have really started to expand the footprint and bring in more experienced folks. What are the differences in sort of pitching YC to people who are maybe on their second or third company, have had an exit? Is the pitch different?
So it was funny. When I was deciding whether to do YC a second time for Social Cam, I was extremely fortunate. I got to ask Brian Chesky this question. Would you do YC again? And it was great because he basically sat me down and he said, of course. He said, some people think about an accelerator as status. I'm a company and my stage is that I'm ready for acceleration. Just like those people who talk about Series A status, Series B status. He's like, that is stupid. He said, YC is a crowbar. It's a tool. And the better you are at using a tool, the more you're going to get done. The more experienced you are at doing startups, the better you are at using YC and the more you get out of it. And the second thing he said to me was that everyone remembers, who's been a multiple-time founder, remembers when they were young and hungry and moving extremely fast. And as we get older, it's hard to summon that feeling. But when you're in YC and you're around 100 to 150 other teams that are grinding every day, you got to come with your A game. And it is so helpful to start your company off at that pace. Because the initial pace of your company, you will never be faster than that pace. You better set a high bar. And so, he's a good pitcher. It was a great pitch. And he was totally right. We grew SocialCam 3x during YC. We raised at a $20 million cap coming out of YC. And we sold 4 months later for $60 million. And none of that would have happened without the pressure to push as hard as possible.
And do you look for different traits or attributes in repeat people than you do in sort of the person who's maybe coming at it for the first time?
No, I think that it's funny, what we look for is so ingrained in every partner because we read so many applications. I'll read about 1,000 to 1,500 applications every year. And so it's just and it's in our own software, so I can just programmatically know exactly what I look for. And it's really the same. The first thing I look for is what does this company do? And what I find so strange, and I didn't realize until I started looking at so many pitches, is your ability to clearly say what you do makes you stand out against literally 50% of the people who apply to YC. And it's this cliche that's totally correct, which is if you can't explain to your mom what you do in 2 sentences, then you probably need to rethink those 2 sentences. Everything can be explained to your mom. Justin TV can be explained. When I would call about Justin TV, I tell my mom, she asked what I do. I said, Justin's walking around with the camera on his head, and we're filming his life 24/7. And it's a website where you can go see that. And she got it. She thought it was stupid, but she completely understood what it was. And I can do that and often have to for every single company that goes to YC. What is the simplest explanation? So first is can I understand easily what you do? I think the second thing is I want to know how technical your team is. To me, at a glance, I equate having technical co-founders and I equate a more equal equity split over a less equal equity split to a team that can execute. The next thing I look at is your progress. So in the application, we ask these 2 questions. How long have you been working on this startup? And what have you done? And I just divide those 2 questions. And I ask myself, am I impressed with your progress? If you're doing a web app and you've been working for 2 years and you're at sketches, then that's not that impressive. If you're building a supersonic plane and you've been doing it for 2 months and you're at sketches, it's probably pretty good. And so I found that ratio works for any type of company, whether it's biotech or software. Then the last thing I look for is really simple. It's what do you know that no one else knows? What is the conviction that you're holding? What is the non-obvious way you look at this market? There are so many different ways of getting to this point. Another way I like to say is what can you teach me about this market that I don't know? If you check those boxes, I would say you have probably about a 50% chance of getting an interview. So as intimidating it is to apply with 7,500 other people, I will tell you as a reader of applications, these are the boxes that people are not checking when they're applying. And you shouldn't be intimidated by this number because remember, anyone can apply. So it's not for Harvard, you have to have SAT scores to apply. Yeah. YC, you have to have nothing. So I really hate when people say oh, it's harder to get into YC than da-da-da-da. It's most other things you applied for have entry requirements. We have none. So it's kind of a fake number. I would kind of say, if you check these boxes, you have a 1 in a 2 chance of getting an interview. In an interview, you've got probably a 1 out of 4 chance of getting in. That's how we pick the batch.
So one thing I've noticed in recent batches is an increasing, it feels like at least as an observer, an increasing share of each batch is companies that are not based in, not only not in the Bay Area, but not based in the United States. Can you just talk about the international outreach you've done and how that's kind of changed the composition of the batch?
So what most people don't realize is the current YC batch is 35% international. When you apply as an international founder, and if you're invited for an interview, we pay for your flight, we pay for your hotel. We are 100% open to folks who are attacking markets that are not the US, from places that are not the US. And I think that a lot of this required us to go out and get the word. So over the past couple of years, we've done a lot of traveling around the world. I've seen Dave McClure in more cities than I can imagine. He probably singly outpaces every single YC partner combined. But a lot of the times what we had to do was go someplace and say, it's okay, like you can get in. Because the number one reason why people don't apply is they don't think they can get in. So oftentimes just going somewhere, I was in Nigeria for 8 days this fall, and Nigerian applications increased 4x. And I didn't do anything. I mean, I didn't do anything. I just talked to people, but it wasn't like I was handing checks out or anything. But I think people just need to know that YC cares. And so that's helped a lot. And we do not believe that the best founders are necessarily in the Bay Area. We feel strongly that it's extremely helpful to come to the Bay Area, but we don't mind being the people who bring you here. We've had tons of success with that.
Do you ever envision, I mean, you're very clear on the website that this is a program that works best when you're here in person. Do you ever envision a scenario where you would relax that?
I think we might experiment with it, but I think that, it's funny, founders who come to interviews who don't get in, who are not from the Bay Area, regularly tell me it was so great to even come to the Bay Area for just a week. There's something special about this place, and I'm not the kind of person who is trying to recreate Silicon Valley somewhere else. I do think there need to be awesome startup communities in a lot of different places, but I don't think they can be Silicon Valley. And so I think in many ways we might be doing folks a disservice if we said, oh, we can do a program where you are. I think a huge part of the value is to bring you here and to be the money and the support and the community and the friends and the kind of infrastructure that gets you here. Because it's not easy to get here organically. So I came here too. 10 years ago, I was on the East Coast. So many YC founders made the journey here. I think it served us extremely well.
And do you think, just keeping with this theme of sort of inclusion, do you think a domestic tour could be equally as effective?
It's definitely something we're thinking about. I think that historically YC has done college tours, which have been really effective, but historically startups have not been as cool as they are now. And there's just a lot of great local communities. And so it's definitely something we're thinking about for this fall.
Running short on time, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I think one of the most fascinating things is that you guys have done recently is the YC Continuity Fund, just in terms of what it means to be a YC founder and also your relationship with the larger venture community. Can you tell the group a bit more about what the YC Continuity Fund is and why you created it?
So we wanted to do a couple of things with the Continuity Fund. The first was that a lot of YC founders in the later stage expressed a problem, which was that when I want to raise my growth rounds, oftentimes those investors are, what's the nice way of saying it?
Just say it.
tricky, maybe hard to deal with. And it'd be great, at this point my board is set up, I know what I'm doing, we have our structure, we have our finances, we're a real company, and it'd be great just to have a very friendly face that can make a pitch, make a quick decision, and invest. And so that's been one great value for that we can provide alumni. Continuity will start looking at companies that are raising growth rounds, $250, $300 million prices, all the way up to billions. And it's a place you can go. I think the second thing was we want to support our companies with pro rata investments, and we never had money. So now we can do that. Now we do blanket pro rata investments in every single YC company. Anytime a YC company raises a round, we're alongside giving money as well. And then I think the last thing was the needs of companies change as they get older. And doing Continuity gave us the ability to build out a lot more infrastructure to support our later stage companies and to help us kind of bridge that gap and be able to give great advice and support from the earliest stage to the latest stages. And really YC is developing into this institution that's cradle to grave. We'll support you the entire way. And our goal at YC is to build an organization that can be over 100 years old. And there are no investing organizations in the Valley that are that old. And so, we thought we can think differently about this.
Well, I think that's a great note to end. I want to thank you for all your great insights.
Thank you.